Hello, everybody. Welcome to DBMS 110, Introduction to Data Analytics. It can be a very interesting subject. Some of us just really enjoy data, right? That's a big deal. I wrote all that different stuff that we know and we can collect it in one spot and organize it and go through it and make sense of it with our modern tools. I guess for many, many thousands of years, humans have had the ability to collect that data that I would be going in the library and spending weeks digging through finding what you need. We can have it in a split second these days, or even in some of our largest data sets. It's not a very long wait to get to it. Some interesting things about it. We're going to add a big part of it is sort of the vocabulary of databases in this class. I'll probably say it both ways, database and database. It's a Latin word, and we still use it the same way the Latins did. So technically it should be data. Data was a popular character on Star Trek, but if you say data, people know what you're talking about. So really both pronunciations are fine. And when we get into database or database, the A is pronounced different either way. So it really doesn't really matter which way you call it, because that's a purely English word. I guess that's a good part to start off on. There'll be a little bit of doing stuff, but mostly it's conceptual stuff in this class, the idea of a database, because no matter where we're heading in IT, even if we're not going to be a data analytics person, we need to know how data analytics people speak so that we can ask them for the right thing. Whether we're a network infrastructure person, a software developer, or in some management position somewhere, we have to be able to communicate properly with the database, data analytics, data analyst. And that way, we make sure we're getting the right results from them. Is anybody considering majoring in data analytics? See a couple hands go up. One thing about data analytics, some of us find it very, very interesting. If you look at those lists of IT salaries, any field of IT pays well, but some pay better than others. And data analyst usually has the highest starting salary and the highest median salary. So it's one of the better paying fields in IT. But let's start talking about that with databases. Let's start with just some course policies. I know some of you all have had me in class before. Add him to the list, and then we'll get started with policy. So I have a lot of general policies, and some of my general policies are different than what you might be used to in other Ivy Tech courses. Get to that in a second. Just kind of, I guess, start by skimming through the syllabus. Go over to Ivy Learn. For those who haven't had me before, I do go by my first name. I do just go by Chris. Don't worry about any formalities or anything. I think I forgot to say that a moment ago. I'm the department chair for software development, informatics, and data analytics. And computer science falls on that list, but computer science is online education only for Sellersburg Ivy Tech. So I don't seem to do a whole lot of paperwork with that. But I teach mostly software development courses and informatics. Informatics 109, the one everybody has to take. I think I know a couple of y'all had me for that class. So everybody had Informatics 109. Yeah, Informatics 109, DBMS 110, and SF 120, the three courses that everybody has to take, because those are the things that show up everywhere in IT. Right? SF 120, that's algorithms, how we give instructions to a machine. No matter where we're heading in IT, we're going to need to give instructions to a machine. Informatics 109, that's just sort of the general catch-all. I like the little triangle picture where hardware and software are kind of the bottom of the triangle, and informatics is the field that ties it together and makes it useful and applicable for people. So wherever we're heading in IT, we need that usefulness. And as far as this class being required for everybody, that's what our machines do. That's the primary purpose we have of them, is to hold, transfer, retrieve, to work with that. And whether it's live time data, like a live stream across the internet somewhere, that can still be viewed as data, or if it's something stored, facts that happened 100 years ago that we need for a history class. Our machine's primary purpose is to store, retrieve, and transmit that data. So everybody has to take this class. It's one of those three. This is the first time I've taught this course. I guess before we jump into syllabus, I'll jump over to modules. I think some people had already started, might have already started looking at stuff before I put this little note on the learning activities on module 1. This is the first time I've taught this course, and I put my name on the schedule for it very, very recently, in like the middle of last week, if y'all didn't notice that. So I put it together in a rush, and I'm still going through it and adjusting it, making little adjustments. So right now it's basically the standardized statewide course shell from Ivy Online for the online class, where there's not a lecture. So that's why there's so many like resources here. It's like read through these, watch all these videos and all that. It's for that Ivy Online where people don't have a lecture component. So those are getting filtered down, but I didn't have time to filter down module 1 before we were going to start on that. So the whole list is there. I'm going to leave those things there, just in case you want to dig into the extra resources. You might find a few minutes to watch, time to watch a 20-minute video and learn a little bit more about databases, your different perspectives. But for the most part, the quizzes are based off the textbook, and the lecture is going to take that a little bit further and kind of cover the same stuff. There's a lot of redundancies in all those resources, but a lot of that stuff was put together for the online courses, and we don't necessarily need all of that there. So the big one's going to be the textbook. Make sure you read the textbook, and then the other stuff should be filled in lecture. Want to make sure and say that right off the bat. A general policy about the course we'll get to in moments. I guess first off, course policies. I know a lot of people on the roster have had me in class before, so you may know some of my general policies. I'm always happy to help. You can reach out to me anytime. The fastest way to get a hold of me is a text message on the cell phone. There are lots of ways to get a hold of me, but you all know how our modern world is. We get notifications about everything. I got to the office at around 11 o'clock today, and it's just now 1 o'clock, and I've already had to block notifications 3 times from things I was doing this morning. So we get a lot of notifications if we don't turn them off. So during the semester, when the courses are running, the only 2 things that make noise on my phone are text messages and the Ivy Learn inbox. So those are the quickest ways to get a hold of me. But they did a big update to Canvas recently, and that started causing like a 45-minute delay on the Ivy Learn inbox. I'm not sure why. It's not a long delay, but it's not as quick as the text messages. Yeah, they added this change in so we can access our regular email through it. But since they did that, it started taking 45 minutes for the messages to the phone. Everybody used that before? That's the official communication channel. Somewhere in the syllabus, I have a note wrote down that if however you get a hold of me, this is the official one for record keeping, so it doesn't hurt to repeat the message later when there's time in the official spot. So like a email thing filtered down for our class. I think it's this one. And then we can filter down, just see the instructors or the adjuncts already been removed from the list, but just the people affiliated with the class, the students, instructor, and then you don't have to remember everybody's email list name. Email addresses, you can just copy them from the list. I have lots of office hours. Monday and Wednesday, the alternate day from our classes when I'm there the longest. It says 11 to 1:30. For the chair duties, I had to kind of split up office hours. Some of them office hours and some of them admin hours. And so 11 to 1:30, then I take a lunch break, and from 2 to 4:30, then it's listed on my door schedule as administrative hours. But if I'm in the office, I'm in the office. That's another time you can reach out to me, and I'm always happy to help. But Monday and Wednesday for most of the day, or at least most of the afternoon, I'll be in the office. Tuesday and Thursday is like after this class and before the evening class, there'll be an hour where I'm in the office. And I do office hours on Sundays as well. I found over the years that most people do their homework on Sundays. So office hours on a Tuesday or office hours on a Wednesday morning aren't the most helpful for the time frame that most people do their homework. So I do Sundays as well. Yeah, y'all can read through this. There's a lot of stuff in the syllabus. You can read through it. If there's a problem with Ivy Learn, there's the educational technology board or the ed tech group. Have their email there. If you can, try and reach out to me if there's a problem with ed tech, because currently Sellersburg is without somebody in that position. There's not anybody in the Sellersburg office for ed tech. And I know that some of the people up at the systems office, they can contact them directly. Bigger emails will go through to them and stuff, but that's for Ivy Learn help. Disabilities, y'all can read the list there. One thing I like to point out, it catches a lot of people off guard moving from high school into college, is your way through high school, if you've got disability accommodations, that was handled automatically. When you're a minor, the administration at the high school or middle school or whatever would keep track of that, and they would just automatically do it for you. But as soon as you become an adult, hit 18, or in the case of some students, maybe start taking college before they graduate high school, when you're in an adult situation, that counts as private information. So it's not automatic. You have to take the first step. After you take the first step, then it's like what you're probably used to from high school, where where they know you need the help, the accommodations, not necessarily help, just little things like extra time on tests, and you need those accommodations, and then it's all automatic. But you have to take that first step because it's considered private information. That one catches people off guard transitioning from high school to college. Learning Commons is where the tutoring is. I told her I'd come in on Fridays, so I'll be in there on Fridays, but there's other IT help as well. If you need help with the stuff in this course, there's a couple IT tutors. Because of the construction in Fowl Hall, it's been moved to right next to the advising office. If you come in the main front door and down the tiled hallway like you're going to advisors, walk past the advising office, and the next door on the right same side is where the tutoring clinic is currently located. For lots of subjects, there's some help for this one, but always math and writing help in there, and most people take more than one class at a time. So. Yes.
And what time on Friday will you be there?
11 to 2 if I'm not in another meeting. Like this week, I have a meeting at 11 o'clock, so I won't be there this week, but when I'm there on Fridays, it'll be 11 to 2. And it does have both Zoom and in-person options for the tutoring there. Ivy Life is the clubs. Y'all can read the paragraphs in detail, but there is a tech club that's very active. There's a lot of events and stuff. They've been playing D&D every Tuesday night. I need to check and see if that changed. In the first 8 weeks, it was every Tuesday night. Y'all are here on Tuesday afternoon. And there's a big D&D game right afterwards. You're already on campus anyway. But they do other stuff too. If you're interested in the club, let me know. I'll make sure and get you included on the emails and information about that. I'll try to announce whenever they have a big event coming up. We are a social species. It's good to be around other people and do things, right? The club, as we came back to campus, the club got very active very quick. We quickly got up to like 30 people on the roster, which is more than I'd ever seen the computer club get to before COVID happened. So it's been very active. So stuff like that, testing services, I just left that in there. We'll talk about the exams in this class before long. Library information, this department was renamed. It used to be ECE. I can't even remember the name. Multiple C's. Career coaching, something. I can't remember the acronym. It was an acronym that was hard to remember because it was all E's and C's, so it blended together when people said it anyway. But they renamed it ID Plus Career Link. Same department it was, the ones that help with resumes and practice interviews, job and things like that. Those resources are there. And not just while you're a student, like after you graduate, when you're an alumni from Ivy Tech, that department's still around to help with the job. Because that's what we come to school for, right? To get a good job, make big paychecks. So there is a department that helps with that part. So you might want to take advantage of that. Currently, we have an interim dean while our dean was out of the country, but our dean should be back in the country within a couple of weeks now. She actually might already be back in the country and just not back in the office yet. But currently the dean from the equivalent school up in Bloomington has been serving this interim position. So if there's ever an event you feel you need to bypass me on, there's his email. Or the Salesforce dean, we should be back to the full-time dean soon. And she'll be on campus, and then there'll be two people you can contact because the interim dean's not going to phase out until the future semester. This one, I always like to point out. From time to time, everybody needs a little help, right? In our society, we know there's help available, but finding it can be a bit tricky. Where do you go apply? Who do you ask for if if you don't have gas money to get to the campus or something? It can be a challenge just to find it, and then once you find it, the help's available. Everybody knows that about our society. Somebody took the time to create a database of links to all the help. So it isn't the help directly, but what this has, oops, that's not the one I wanted. This one here, it says ibassist.aunt Bertha. Let me open that in a new tab. This is just a database where they consolidated lots and lots of help programs. So it's not the actual program itself, it's the links to it, all the information about it. You think of it as the application. So instead of going digging around trying to find the applications, they're all in one place. I'm just going to put in Clarksville zip code because that's the one I know. And 2,000 help programs in Clarksville. In the first 8 weeks, when I was going over this on the day one, going through the syllabus, click on this, in the afternoon, between the afternoon and evening classes, that number changed. So it stays up to date, lifetime up to date. Or at least refreshes several times a day. So it's always the most up to date thing. I mentioned transportation. Maybe you need help paying for gas. Is this program ended yet? I'm supposed to write, oh, nope, it's still right at the top. I guess a lot of people might not have even known it, but when everything shut down in 2020, the government paid for gas for restaurant workers, people that formerly made tips, because they couldn't do anything if they said if there was suddenly no more tips. But that program hasn't dried up yet. At least the gas one hasn't dried up. I think the grocery one, the one buying groceries finished, but the one buying gas, they haven't burned through all that money yet. Other things, healthcare, but little things like that. Food pantry, there's a food pantry right here at Ivy Tech. There's food pantries all over the place, but there's one here at Ivy Tech. Oh, maybe people have young children and working their way through college and have trouble affording all the diapers and formula and stuff. There's help provided for that. Several programs. So it's just a consolidated database so you only have to go look one place for any help that you might need. Instead of spending hours that most of us don't have digging around trying to find out if there's help or not. Okay, so now in the course stuff, so here's the book for the course. It should be on the Ivy Plus bookshelf. Does anybody look to make sure you could access the book?
Yeah, I was able to, off the bookshelf.
Okay, yeah, you'll see that. This one's been around for a couple years, so there's physical copies. Oh. Oh. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's the cheapest book. $200 for the used one. So probably don't want to go with the full hard copy version. $130 for the loose leaf one. It's free right here, and then there are alternatives to get the printout version. So if you're an Ivy Tech student, you can get that loose leaf version for free. Ones that go in the 3-ring binder. I started pointing it out because I discovered a lot of people don't know. If you do that and go to put it in the 3-ring binder, put it in the binder before you take the cellophane off. Because when it's still wrapped in cellophane, everything's lined up nicely. But they're those slick pages, so when you take the cellophane off, they're going to slide all over the place. Then it's kind of difficult to get it in the binder. Or it takes a lot more effort to get it in the binder. I watched a couple people struggle with that not long ago. It was like, oh, I should probably make sure I point that out every time. There's instructions on how to get that, I believe, in the syllabus. Oh yeah, so there's a link right there for the instructions on how to get the free loose leaf version if you like physical books better. But it is an ebook, probably has a reader. Some people really like it. I know all the St. Age books do. And that's a disability accommodation. So surely it has that where you can just hit the button and just listen to the textbook instead of reading it. But if you do that, be careful because there are a lot of acronyms used in this course. This textbook is full of acronyms. Oh yeah, so if you go over to the dots to the right, the Zoom calls are in the way, Zoom thumbnails are in the way in the picture here. Those. If you go to the little 3 dot, the more button over at the right, the option to read out loud is right there at the top. Just there's a lot of acronyms, so it might try to pronounce some of them. It is a mindless machine that will be reading it out loud. Be aware of that, but some people really like those options. And the quizzes are based off that. So all those other resources, they're just there if you need them. I don't want to delete them since somebody already went around. Might as well keep the links around, but the textbook and the lecture should be enough for the class here. There's our general description. This list, really thing I point out on this list is more for the end of the semester. Every single course you take at Ivy Learn, every single course you take at Ivy Tech will have this list in the syllabus. It's a requirement. That's the course outline of record. And then that has this list of major course learning objectives. The name's not hiding anything there. So the stuff you're supposed to learn from this course. And that's very important for courses that this class is going to be a prerequisite for. And there are a whole lot of courses that this one is a prerequisite for. So when you get into those other courses, they're going to expect that you've learned everything on this list. So at the end of the semester, you always, not just for this class, but in all your classes, you want to look back at this list and make sure you can check off everything on that list. You're like, yeah, I learned that. They're written vague and open for interpretation, that sort of thing, for a reason. But by the end of the semester, you should feel like you've learned everything on that list. And if not, that's the questions you want to ask. And you can make sure you can check those off. Or I guess you can also think about it as getting your money's worth out of a course, right? That's the checklist to make sure you got what you paid for from the list. Not just in this class, but in all of them. And a whole bunch of just general policies here. Oh, I copied and pasted something from the Learn Anywhere course, which is something that I was needing to talk about. There's been some confusion around the different formats of courses offered now. And this one is actually blended. There's a typo in the syllabus. I'll correct that after class. Copied and pasted from a Learn Anywhere. So this course is actually blended, which means there is non-campus requirement, synchronous requirement. And on some blended one has been causing a bit of a problem for some people around the state, as people will just see that there is a, like, they'll say something about Zoom content or online content, and people will think it's a Learn Anywhere or a virtual class. So they'll register for one 3 hours away. But the blended ones should have an on-campus requirement. And I kind of have to enforce that a little bit this semester. So I went to pull up the policy, make sure everybody's aware of what the policy says on each one. Does everybody know where to find the college policies? So if you go to My Ivy, Tools and Resources, under Resources, this link right here is the policies. You often hear it called ASOM, so the acronym ASO. Manuals at the end, or ran out of room on the label on the button, but academic support and operations manual. There's also the student handbook, and all the points that apply to students are going to be copied and pasted there. This is all the policies, and you can just start searching for stuff. So if we search for blended, we're in a blended class, policy 610, instructional modalities, list out exactly what's going on with those. Standard policies, so legal documentation, right? All the words that get used to define, you can read all that, or skip past that unless you need it. Traditional classes don't run much anymore. There's not much confusion over that one. Right? Traditional will like show up at campus and sit in the classroom. But there's not many of those running anymore, except for the ones that absolutely have to, like the nursing students when they do their clinicals and they would be in the hospital working with patients. You can't do that remotely. Robotics program and advanced manufacturing. Some of their classes, they have very, very, very expensive equipment. Way more expensive robots than the typical student could afford. So they kind of need to be there on campus for that. I think the HVAC people also have some traditional classes still, because you can't really take apart an air conditioner and put it back together across the Zoom call. You can only do that hands-on. But there's not many of those running anymore. So online is the asynchronous version. Asynchronous means that you do it at your own schedule. Everybody's doing it at their own time. There's no standard meeting or anything. Some of them do require synchronous things where everybody has to come together. And for online, if there is a synchronous requirement, there has to be an asynchronous alternative that people can still get the points for and stuff. So that one's sort of everybody on their own. Before the Zoom call started, we were talking about that. There's people in the classroom were saying they're not quite as happy with the online class. There's a nice convenience factor, but sometimes it feels like you're shining your own windows. I remember that's how I felt through a whole lot of my online courses. So when I teach an online course, I try to make sure people don't feel like that. People never feel like they were just sold a textbook and said, good luck with that. Try to, but I don't teach online courses like most people, since I had a whole bunch of courses. Virtual, this is what was happening for those couple years when everything was shut down. That's the one purely in Zoom call. We're all just, it's synchronous. We all meet at the same time and interact, but we do it through Zoom. With virtual classes, there might not even be a classroom scheduled on campus. Sometimes that works, right? no trouble to deliver a lecture through a Zoom call. But some classes are a bit more hands-on. So we need to mix and match the traditional and virtual, and that's what blended is. So here's the policy on blended, combination of traditional and either online or virtual. This little clause right here is the one that throws people off. And it's open to interpretation. Policies up. There's a little bit of wiggle room for interpretation, but that clause right there, not at the same time. So what I'm doing here with, how many people showed up? 4 people on the, was it 3 or 4? With 3 people on the Zoom call and 3 people in the classroom, probably violates that policy, right? Because that's definitely, we're definitely doing that at the same time. It's a nice 50-50 split for the class right now. So there will be some on-campus requirements. Talk about the attendance policy soon. 1/3. So they're 8 weeks, 2 times a week. I have a conference in April that so one class is going to be canceled, which is 15 days of class. And that comes out really nicely for 1/3 then, right? That means there's going to be 5 days where there's going to be some type of attendance requirement. Attendance is not going to be a very big, it's not going to be a very big percentage of the grade, but that policy will be in place. And make sure you look at these and understand the differences between the policies, because that's been throwing some people off. They'll just see that it says online content, so they'll think class they can attend to Zoom and sign up for a blended class 3 hours away from their home, or it's not feasible at all to get there. So we need to, over this 8 weeks and a couple of classes, you're probably going to hear similar spiel like this in some of your other classes. And trying to make sure everybody's aware of the policies and the differences between them. And Learn Anywhere is the one where the instructor is on campus, maybe not necessarily the same campus you're at. And the first 8 weeks, Informatics 109 ran that way. Couldn't find a local adjunct, but the person that was supposed to teach it at Madison, they canceled because of low enrollment. So she just taught our Learn Anywhere course, but she did it from a campus. She did it from a classroom at Madison campus. And then this room was unlocked. People came in, used the Learn Anywhere equipment in the classroom. So the instructor's on campus, maybe not necessarily the same campus you're at. And everything's it's available through Zoom. Otherwise, it's like a traditional format, only you have a classroom or a Zoom option. And that's the one that people are getting. I really like the Learn Anywhere format. That is by far my preferred format. So except for those 5 days to meet that policy requirement there, it's pretty much going to be a Learn Anywhere course. Those have had it before. Everything's going to be on Zoom. Everything's going to be recorded. Attendance is a small portion of the grade. We'll get to that policy in a second. But there are those 5 days, which is just a small portion of that small portion. So I want to make sure everybody's aware of those 2 policies and you don't accidentally register for the wrong sort of class. Yeah, I'll go ahead and say the attendance policy. So attendance is 7% of your grade. Attendance, participation, and not necessarily those 5 days. So just attendance and participation in general. I decided I should start doing something because some people will always show up to class, right? Always show up to class, always work really hard. And I wanted to do a little something that's like a little bonus for them, but not enough to punish the people that can still get through the class easily without, if they only show up half the days, right? Only show up 5 or 6 times a semester, but still get an A in the class. Something seems off there because those other people were putting in a lot more effort. So attendance and participation is worth 7% of the grade. So just that last little bump at the end. You still do really well in the course without attending, but the last little, most of the A range is handled from that attendance and participation. For the most part, it's without attending classes, a high B. sort of thing was what I was thinking. That way it's a nice little boost for the people that do attend class and work really hard. And of that, that's for the whole semester. So then 1/3 of that, 1/3 of 7% is 2.3%. So those 5 days that there's going to be that stricter attendance requirement, which one of those days, there is a group assignment in here. If anybody's looked ahead and saw that, there's a group assignment. So at least one of those days, maybe 2 of those days are going to be for group work. That way your group can meet and work on the project while you're in the same, sitting there together in the classroom. I'm trying to find out a good way, but that's 2.3% of the grade. It's 1/3 of 7%. So a little bitty chunk on those 5 days, but that's really just make sure everybody is aware of all the policies. And there are 2 people where attending is kind of a big issue. I've already reached out, communicated with both of those people. If attending is a really big issue where it's going to be difficult, like, yeah, if there's a situation, if you have a situation where it's going to be almost impossible to attend, let me know. We'll talk about that. But at the same time, I just told you how much it's worth on the final grade. A really, really small point of the grade. Just need to enforce that policy, make sure people know about it. Okay, so now the policy for my courses that should probably be talked about the most, probably one y'all care about a lot more than some of the others, right? Especially the ones that are just copied and pasted from the general policies. The due dates and deadlines. For those who have not had me in class before, the due dates and deadlines are very different in my course. To start with, I try to make sure there's always a chance to ask questions. I remember sitting in classrooms or not in the classroom, at home working on homework, send an email to the instructor and say, I have a question on the homework. And they'll be like, well, you can ask in class on Monday. And one time in particular that I was told that homework was due as soon as class started. It was a 9:30 class. If you tried to put your homework in at 9:31, it was not accepted. So being told that I could ask the question about homework in class meant that I couldn't get the answer before the homework was due, and that really bothered me. So in my classes, there's always a chance to ask questions before homework is due. So this is a Tuesday, Thursday class. So you might be used to everything being due at Sunday night at midnight, which is another issue. The real world doesn't work that way. All our deadlines don't show up at the same time. That's not good practice for the real world. So I like to change away from that. The general due date is going to be Tuesday and Thursday at 11:59 p.m. So that way you can show up for the it's Tuesday. We're in a Tuesday, Thursday class, and Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. That way, if you have questions about the homework, you can ask about it in the class and get the answer, get pointed in the right direction before the homework's actually due. A computer is tracking that, it's automated. So if you turn it in at 12 a.m. instead of 11:59, the computer's going to apply the late entry. Yes.
So that's every other Tuesday. Like this Tuesday's homework will be due next Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we'll start into module 2 before module 1 homework is due. I just added this. This one's new. Some of y'all may not have seen this one yet. I just added this little one in here. So I'm a pretty laid back person and I understand things happen, but there was one too many times that people would ask for an extension in like module 1, and then I'd never seen any homework until module 8. At the last day of class, they're desperately trying to turn things in. So I did put a limit on those extensions. Assume 3 days. Obviously, every situation is different, right? But the expectation is going to be if you ask for an extension, it's going to be a 3-day extension. So homework's due Tuesday at midnight. So if you need a little more time, that'll push up to a Friday at midnight or 11:59 p.m. It's easier to say midnight. So a limit on the extensions. Any setup assignments will need done in the module they're assigned. There's going to be one. This class is primarily conceptual stuff, concepts, vocabulary, something called normalization. We're going to spend a lot of time on normalization. It makes a big difference. We'll notice it in small classroom size examples of databases, the speed difference in normalization. So when we get up to modern data sets in the world, it makes a big difference. So we're gonna spend a lot of time talking about normalization, but there's still stuff to do. So we need to set up databases to actually do stuff. The online course shell, I did remove this. They use this Oracle one, which they provide free to students, but usually cost a whole bunch of money. I went with the ones that I use most often, which also happen to be the most popular databases you will see. A MySQL database with this web-based interface called PHP MyAdmin, or we can do it right in the terminal. But that's the one I know best, and I can answer questions about it off the top of my head. But the one that was built into the online course shell, I might have to go look stuff up. I know a lot of the answers off, but for an actual MySQL database instead of an Oracle database, I know all the answers off the top of my head because that's what I always use in my own projects and have been for years. So there'll be a setup at some point there. I typed up the first draft. I want to do at least one edit before I hit publish on that page. But we won't be doing that stuff until at least week 4. So we will get there soon. But setup assignments, obviously you have to set them up either way in order to continue, but you only get points on the module they're assigned. Discussion boards as well, so no late discussion board. That's supposed to be a conversation between you and your classmates. The discussion boards in that statewide shell, expect some editing here. If you haven't looked at this, like there's more than one discussion board in several modules. I'm not really sure who set up the statewide shell, and some of them are like research essays. There's nothing to discuss. And when you go to make your reply, it's really hard to say anything other than like, oh yes, that is the correct definition of that word. So it's not really a discussion thing. So expect some editing on those before long. So don't work too far ahead. This is kind of the first time. Last week was the first time I looked at the statewide shell for this. So I wasn't sure the state it was in. There'll be some that are actual discussion boards. There's going to be at least one that I found it worked best in discussion boards. There's going to be at least one that I require you to use generative AI on. ChatGPT is still the word on everybody's on the tips of everybody's tongues, but its replacement was released earlier this month. So it's certainly not the only one. It's also a nice little one that is desktop software, so you get your own private generative AI chatbot released earlier this month. But I will require you to use one of those because if you're in IT, you need to be aware of how to use those, and it also opens up the opportunity that we can take a few minutes in class and make sure you know how to optimize those. Yes.
Second one, is it compatible with Mac yet? I know when they first released it, it was only like a Windows or like their OS.
You might have to use an online one. Apple. So the reason Apples are so stable is because they use old technology. I guess old is the wrong way to say it. They use thoroughly debugged technology. So the latest, newest stuff is not going to show up in an Apple. But there is online versions where you can just go through the browser. Have to go through the browser, but
we don't have to set up like you were saying, a person.
Yeah. I was just letting you know that one was there in case you want to use it. It'll probably be a little while before they do that. Before they add it to a Mac.
Yeah, I'd read something about them trying, like working on setting it up on a Mac. The guy that was developing, or the couple people that have been working on it.
Oh yeah, you can force it to work if you know a whole lot about that and a whole lot about Mac. If you know all the pieces, you can force them together. But there are a couple drawbacks. One of the things about Mac OS is it's better for everything's in human format. So a human can go in and handle with everything, which is not the best way for the machine to deal with it. We have problems with some of that. But the online ones work. But I want to make sure everybody knows how to use that because that tool's not going away. And we can optimize it. Like you're about essays, or in the case of it's going to be on the discussion board because I found that's where it worked the best. So you can tell your classmates what you did, whether you just put the prompt in all at once or whether you split it up into a conversation, which is what you really should be trying to do. The goal of those things is like Alexa and Siri and Google Assistant and all those, which is bark orders machines, which isn't the best way for humans to interact with things. And they want to get it something like Rosie on the Jetsons. Everybody remembers those old cartoons where we're just interacting with it like another person in the room. So it's with that interaction, you get much better stuff. And steer the conversation is a big deal. But we'll talk about that soon. Definitely expect changes to these discussion boards. I might redo some of the prompts so that they're more discussion wise instead of just research that. Go look up the meaning of a word and write a paragraph on it. There's not really much you can reply that way if everybody just looks up the definition of the same word. But as I get those adapted to something more conversational between you all, if you miss a conversation, you miss a conversation, right? Show up late to a party and your friends say, oh, we just had the greatest conversation ever. That doesn't mean you're free to bring that topic back up. It means you missed it. So I treat discussion boards that way. And I will get those edited. I'll be editing those down soon, but there's a couple things to edit along the way. Just let you all know that's coming. Quizzes are the same schedule as the homework, but you can only turn a quiz in for one week late. The point, same late penalty applies if it's late, but only for 7 days. Oh, and the late penalty stops at 50%. I stopped grading at 50%. It's an F and F. Fail an assignment, fail an assignment. But I kept going, get down to where you only get like 5 out of 100 points. That's a lot harder to come back from than. So sometimes I don't even go to 50%. I start when I'm grading. If it hits an F, I stop grading because it's still recoverable at that point, or a lot more recoverable. So the late penalty does stop at 50%. So it's worth it to turn it in late, even if it's really, really late. Exams are different. There is a calendar week to do the exams. So they open at 12 a.m. on Sunday and close on Saturday. And so that's the big one to take note of. Everything else can be doing with, obviously, our course ends on a Sunday, so module 8 is going to be different. But in general, everything's going to be due on Tuesday. So remember your exams here. There's a midterm and a final. Those will be due on those are due on a Saturday. I like to change up dates. It also adds a nice little advantage that for those people that wait for the last minute to do their homework. Last minute in our class is different than last minute in your other classes. So the last minute isn't always Sunday night at 11:59. I just copied the makeup policy. This doesn't apply to anybody so here today, but this one doesn't apply. If you need to drop a course, there's a difference between drop and withdrawal. A drop is for like you're going to set your schedule up, you look through the descriptions and you see something name catches your eye and like, oh, that sounds really interesting. So you sign up for it. And then you get to the class the first day and discover that it's a class you already had. They just changed the name of it. It's like, oh, that's why that sounded interesting. It's my main study. You don't need to take it, then you can drop out of it and it doesn't show up on your records or anything. It's like you never registered for it. So that's really for the ones like where you registered the wrong course. Like I think mentioned a few moments ago about modalities. And people mix up the blended and learn anywhere modality. And maybe somebody lives in East Chicago, signed up for a course in Sellersburg that has an on-campus requirement. That's kind of a long drive. So they would need to drop that and switch in time to pick up for another one. So basically this week, first week of class, you can drop a course. And anybody that I haven't heard anything from, everybody here today, you got your names right down on the list. Some people already turned in assignments. If I haven't heard anything by next Tuesday, I think, something the 28th is, I have to get Zoom thumbnails out of my way to get the calendar. Yes, by next Tuesday, I'll submit the names of all the people that never showed up or anything. A withdrawal is different. So if you're going along and sometimes life happens, right? You might get sick and you're stuck in bed for 2 weeks, not able to do any homework or something. That's an awful long time to be sick in an 8-week course. You miss some stuff, maybe fall behind, and you realize that things aren't going to go well at the end. And you don't want that course messing up your GPA. So you can withdraw from the course. Unlike a drop, it does show up on your transcript as a W, but then that gets replaced when you retake the course. And it doesn't hurt your GPA. You can do that almost to the end of the semester. I think that's week 5, the end of week 5. Past halfway, 8 weeks isn't very long, but five is at least closer to the end than the beginning. And a whole bunch of stuff. You all can read this. The policy I copied and pasted from said the instructors will respond within 36 hours. If you don't hear from me in 12 hours, something bad. I'm one of those people that check my email 20 times a day. If I wake up in the middle of the night, grab a drink of water, I'm going to jump on and check my email just in case something came in. Again, text messages and Ivy Learning inbox are the quickest way to get a hold of me, but any way you can find to give me a message is acceptable. Inbox and Ivy Learning is the official way to do that. Stuff about assignments, the grading, and then the attendance and participation, we talked about that. For right now, I threw a number on there, kind of remind y'all that it's worth some points. I think I put like 83 or something. But at the end of the semester, I mentioned this, there's gonna be some editing, so expect changes as I go through and edit it. At the end of the semester, like that morning when I go to turn in grades, I'll punch in a calculator and figure out what's 7. So like here, if it's all these points, then that 1,075 points would be 93% of the class. So I'll just figure out what that other 7% is and then do the attendance right from that. So that's the general course policies, everything spelled out in the syllabus. If you have any questions, that's always a good place to look. I noticed the one typo, but that was in the policies. I copied and pasted from a Learn Anywhere course, so it said it was Learn Anywhere course, but I'll get that fixed. So put that on the list, put that on the list. So let's look at some of what's going on and a quick overview of the course. Some of y'all will probably already looked through the assignments we have and stuff. We're on the assignments tab. So a bunch of discussion boards, those are going to be edited. Those are definitely going to be edited, even if I go with the topic there. It's going to switch to something conversational so that it's not like those ones from the online course where it's just like, go look up this word. How do you respond to your classmates when you all just look up the same definition? That's not a good discussion board topic, I think. So those will be edited soon, but probably not the module 1. Obviously not the module 1 discussion boards. So, they go. So a bunch of assignments. So notice there's some writing. There's no categories here. Okay. Yeah, some writing stuff and diagrams. We're doing quite a bit of writing and drawing diagrams. And that's the way I would summarize this class all in one sentence, and the reason everybody has to take it. No matter where you're heading in IT, whether you're heading to be a data analytics person or a server administrator or a software developer, you are going to need to speak the language that data analysts speak. Because everybody that's not the data analysts are obvious, but everybody else is going to need to communicate with data analytics people. And you want to be able to communicate properly with them and use their language to make sure you get the right results from the database. You get back the data you want. So it's a lot of communication stuff, and words and diagrams. We'll be doing lots of those. They're not super long papers. This one on module 1, I know it's not due till next Tuesday, but if you can find time, I would like for you to do this before our Thursday lecture. Because what I really want to see here, I'm sure whoever designed this at the IBM Online Shell, wanted you to go look up those words. I want to know what you think about databases coming into the course. Before we start looking all this stuff up and learning all this technical stuff, what do you know about databases? Where does it stand now? And all the writing assignments are like that, 200 words. That's a couple paragraphs. That's less than a page. So they're not long writing assignments. But as far as this first one, if you can find time, try to get that in early, or at least get a first draft of it written early, because I'd like to see what your starting impression is. If you can, it's just a couple paragraphs and what you know about databases coming in, what you think about them. Yeah, the starting point of the class, and then when we jump into the content lectures on Thursday, it's not going to interfere with your preconceptions coming in, and that's the information I would like, and I will use that to address the lecture too. Depending on what it looks like people know or don't know about databases to begin with, I'll adjust and adapt. I'm very adaptive. Feel free to ask questions. Send me down the rabbit hole to talk about stuff. If you're curious, we can talk about it and go further than what this course shows on its own. Module 6, there's some assignments where we're going to write some small database scripts using SQL. That's where I went with the MySQL one instead of the Oracle Apex, just because I have much more experience with MySQL, and I can answer a question for days right off the top of my head about MySQL. And on the Oracle ones, some of those finer points I might have to look up as well. So I was like, well, I'll just go with the one I want to use, which also happens to be by far the most popular one. I even chose the most popular interface from it. This isn't a website class, but has anybody heard of WordPress or Wix, Squarespace? The head nods. They're called content management services. The drag and drop things we use to put a website together. Really easy ones where you don't have to know how to code, you're just dragging your mouse around. The most popular ones of those all use MySQL databases. And there is a particular web-based interface to interact with that MySQL database that all of those sites recommend the same one. So that's what I've chose for the interface on it. Though we'll also see it in the terminal, and what you'll submit on that assignment will be a text file. We'll just have the file extension .sql instead of .txt. Still going to write in text editors. And I'm probably going to add one more assignment around that time, so module 6, module 7 for a NoSQL database, which is non-relational data. We're going to talk about that after a break here in a few moments. That's in the preview lecture that I have planned for here in a few minutes. After we do the quick preview of the course. So group projects are going to be a big one. There's going to be 2 deliverables on that. I'm sure why the screen just flashed there, but so you'll get with your group partners and you'll design the database. It's fairly straightforward. There's a situation, a successful real estate investment business, and need to organize the data for it. So you go set them all that stuff up, and normalize the database and put it in first normal form and all sorts of stuff to make it look nice. And this one will be all diagrams and descriptions of what's going on. And then the second deliverable, you'll write a small SQL script that actually creates that database you designed, the first one. So your group will have plenty of time to work on those. And we will be doing some active stuff, but it is a lot of conceptual stuff. For those heading into that analytics program or those in the software development program that want to learn a lot about the coding explicitly, DBMS 130 is the one that's the course on SQL. That's like the programming course where you sit down and that's what you do day after day after day is just write SQL code. So that's the language course 130, but this is a prerequisite for that course. That way they don't have to waste time defining terms in that course. You can spend all the time actively doing stuff, but we will be doing some active stuff, making some databases there. It's something that takes practice, just because of the way that I like to do things. We will probably do some active things along the way too, and just sit down and instead of just talking about the words, we'll spin up a couple databases real quick on couple MySQL databases and make both versions, and then we can compare it, and then it's more than just words on a page, right? We can see the difference of what they're doing. I like to teach that way, so we will see some of that stuff in class too, not just lectures of rattling through the vocab words. When we get to the vocab words, we'll go make some tables in the database and compare them side by side to see the difference of what those words actually mean, not just the words on the page. Y'all can look through that, quizzes. There's a midterm and a final. I will remind you about the schedule change, but remember calendar date on exams, a calendar week on exams, not the regular Ivy Tech module week. Oh, I put 87 points, but that'll be adjusted. Attendance and participation will be adjusted at the end, and there's going to be 5 days where that's a requirement, which is 1/3. So ultimately, those 5 days will count as 1/3 of 7%, or 2.3% of your grade. If you haven't had me before, I do give extra credit and stuff, but typically extra credit is kind of given randomly. When I see work that is I'm pretty laid back when I grade. So when I see really, really nice stuff, I got to do something. That's where the extra credit comes from, of course. New technology report. I would include this in just about every class. They may have me for more than one class this 8 weeks. If you do, let me know, because this is in every class I'm teaching this 8 weeks as well. But no matter what field you're in, doesn't have to be technology, doesn't have to be IT, accountants, nurses, medical lab technicians, regular business administration. Every field you're in, doesn't even have to be college. Construction workers and electricians, you need to stay up to date on the field, right? It's an important thing. It's even more important in IT because our field changes quickly. Just a few minutes ago, or a couple hours ago, was the keynote from NVIDIA's annual conference. Some really, really interesting things coming up on their plans, and some really interesting announcements and stuff that they got coming out. But I jotted down some notes. I might mention some. Might point you towards that. So that's new technology route today, but ask that you write a small report. By the end of the semester, it's going to be put in a couple modules. So it'll be in like module 2 and module 5, just as reminders to not put it off to the end. But hopefully it's really interesting. People usually find really interesting technology. Find some new technology. Updates do count as new technology. If you're a cybersecurity person, a breach does count as new technology, as long as the breach has been analyzed. If all you can say is somebody, like a couple months ago, somebody hacked into Norton LifeLock. But they're not quite sure how they got in there. They just got all the information from it. That's not new technology. For the ones that have been analyzed, when somebody used a certain port as a way to get in, that would be new technology. But updates and well-described breaches would count on that. So find three new technologies and write a paragraph or two on each. News report, like news report, you don't have to make a point like an essay or anything. And here's some links, which you might want to copy anyway, depending on what field you're heading into, of just some of the best places to get news for that particular field of IT. And NVIDIA's annual conference just started 3 hours ago. The keynote was earlier today, had some really, really interesting things from that. So there's some good videos you can watch from there or talk about after a break as well. Also, this is IT. Essays haven't changed since the 1920s. They update those style rules, right? MLA and APA, they update their stuff all the time. But it's still no different than when everything was done on a typewriter. We can do way better than that these days. So that is an option if you just want to do it that way, because that's probably what you're used to from Microsoft Word and stuff. It's a report, so if you want to do it like a news report, that's a good option. I took a guess, so I went to something that was about the length of time I wanted it to be, and it took about 8 minutes to read one of those essays, nice and slow and clearly like you would put it on a news report, maybe periodically throw up flashes of other video, all that editing stuff. But it's a report, so if you want to do it like a typical news report and send me a video, that's fine as well. Or a blog, you can just write a blog. I have this video from a couple years ago when I did an IBYD 115 class. Instead of journals, I had everybody write blogs, and we used Google Sites. So that's really quick and easy, so that's using that. If you've had something like the SF 153 or 155, or up to the SF 257 class, and you can make a way better blog yourself, feel free to do that. I just put that video there if you're not sure how to get started putting a website out there. But that would be a viable option that can look a lot better than those things that might as well have been written on a typewriter. We can do way better than black letters on a white piece of paper these days. There's a way to record right on here. You'll see there's a link. Either over in the green links on the bottom, there's one that says studio. There might be one in the blue links as well on our course. But this has some screen capture software. Actually, some pretty nice ones. Webcast-O-Matic. They have a free one, puts a watermark on stuff. And then they have a paid for one that's really, really nice. This is the paid for one. They worked out a deal with the school. So the first time you hit the record button, I can't do because I'm on the Zoom call right now with my screen. It'll download the software. And then after it downloads and installs, then you hit record and it just starts doing your screen capture or screen capture and webcam. Be perfect for making a very quick news report style video on that new technology and do that on your report instead of an essay. But alternative formats are option. There are options on the format. If you have an idea for another option, a way to present that information that you think would be really good, let me know. What's something like that? Like maybe you really, really like to program video games. Like, can I just talk about the new technology in like an educational video game style? That would be fine. That would probably be huge. That would be way, way overboard getting the video game part together to do the educational video game part together to present a paragraph worth of information about free technologies. But I'm open to other alternatives if you think you have a good one as well. So that's the policies and general overview of the course. Does anybody have any questions of that stuff? As always, the modules, go to modules, that's the recommended order to go through things in. And it's going to be edited, learning activities, include all of the stuff from all of the extra resources they put in Ivy Online to get around not having a lecture. But we do have a lecture, so the quizzes are based mostly off the textbook. Off the textbook and the lecture, so. The other stuff is just extra if you want to read it. Okay, so that took us up a little bit past 2. Probably a good time for a break, right? Oh, I should check the chat. That's where it's been a few seconds since I asked if anybody had any questions, so I assume the silence means no. 10 minutes sound good to everybody for a quick break? Okay, my laptop. Oh, for those who haven't seen me before, I like to use my laptop where I have permission to do everything instead of the school's machines. So if you go to DM me in the chat room, make sure you send the DM to whatever laptop I have out. It says Chris PC or Chris Mac or Chris Chromebook. I'll use all of them throughout the semester. Whichever one I'm on that day, make sure you send any direct messages to the laptop, not the school's machine. I might not see that until after class. All right, my laptop says 212, so we'll get back to it at 222 and start getting into the database. See y'all in just a moment.